welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. This is episode 173. Episode 173 of Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am so happy that you are here and part of our program today. This is a show that is part of the Management Magicians series. Management Magicians series is all about, it's dedicated to, it's inspired by, it honors those who volunteer to serve as managers in an organization, and when they are the most talented, the most dedicated to their craft of management, what they are able to accomplish appears to be magic. Team members who are engaged, low turnover, high levels of collaboration, coordination, innovation, the ability to have shared commitment. It really looks like magic from the outside. So that's why we call them management magicians, because they're those who step into that field of management and excel. They excel not only in terms of the results, where honestly it looks like magic from the outside, but they also inside enjoy what they do. They wake up and they look forward to going to work. Overall, they have more of a positive general feeling about what they do than a negative one. We call that in our programs, we call that they are practicing the joyful art of business. Yes. So Management Magician Series, this is show 173. I do always note to please stop by CourtneyAnderson.com. That's our main website, CourtneyAnderson.com. And check out this show page. There's an individual show page dedicated just to this program with links and notes and expanded content. There also are opportunities for you to contact me and tell me your ideas for shows, give us your feedback. I do encourage you to share our program on social media. If you have any positive ratings or reviews or feedback, or just constructive, please note those wherever you access our program on iTunes or Stitcher or Libsyn or anywhere else. We have many different distribution networks, and that's what some of those are that I was referencing. And please consider seriously supporting our sponsors. You'll see advertiser material and show affiliate links to products and services that have entered into agreements to support our program and to be a funding and revenue source for what we're doing. So do visit those links and consider products and services from those sponsors, because that's how we're able to provide this daily show. This is our daily audio podcast or radio show, and we also have a video show or a television show. We have several of those episodes available at CourtneyAnderson.com, and we're also going to be relaunching those on a weekly schedule. So please let me know what's on your mind. This specific show is really interesting. I'm just savoring it. That's what those noises are. It's me savoring this topic. Our show topic here today on episode 173 of Solutions with Courtney Anderson is: are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? Are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? Now, this is, like I said, it's interesting, and part of it is because, of course, our Management Magician series is, as I just said, all about those who are already performing at this elite level, right? What they're doing is working, they're getting these great outcomes, or above average outcomes, or positive outcomes. They're also internally joyful, sometimes at least, and overall, feel good about work, look forward to it. And it literally looks like sleight of hand, right? It looks like magic. How do you get this to happen? How are your team members here and engaged and enthusiastic and passionate and cordial to each other? I mean, what's going on? Okay, so that's the show series, right? The deal is, though, that there are people who aspire to be management magicians or who used to be management magicians, and something has happened. So that's what we're talking about today. The question, of course, is are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? Now, of course, if someone is a management magician, then of course it's not happening because they're already operating at this level where they're excited and enthusiastic. Their team members are, and so of course not. Their insecurities and fears aren't preventing employee empowerment. They're management magicians. Yet, as I said, there are people who are aspiring to be. Maybe they haven't yet entered into management at all, or they used to be a management magician and something's happened and now they want to get back to being a management magician. So that's who we're talking to with this issue, right? And for those who are not yet full-fledged or are not currently full-fledged management magicians, aspiring or hoping to become again in that category, then the answer to this question is yes. Are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? The answer is yes, they are. Yes. Now remember, you are not a management magician, because if you were, then the answer of course would be no. You wouldn't even ask this question. How do I know that? Because management magicians have exceptional employee empowerment. They've got data on it. How empowered are your employees? They've got related issues. How engaged are your employees? What is your retention rate? What is your retention rate as compared to the average of your industry? I mean, they have data that shows, of course, this isn't happening to them because their employees are incredibly empowered. If you're asking the question, are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment, then you're A, not a full-fledged or current management magician, and B, if you're asking the question, I can give you the answer. I already know the answer because you asked me the question and the answer is yes. When you come to the show page, again, CourtneyAnderson.com, there's your show page, and also wherever you accessed our show, there should have been embedded in the tags a link to the site. So it should say site, and then like I have a long URL, and that's the actual URL for the show. So either way, just come by the show and you'll see some links to a couple of things. Again, I asked the question for the people who are not full-fledged current management magicians, are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? The answer is yes. Here's some data. This is from a Washington Post article. Washington Post is a newspaper periodical based in the U.S. So here we go. A recent Gallup research shows that 17% of people who quit their jobs leave because they can't stand management or the work environment. In a 2009 survey, 35% of executives said that good employees are most likely to quit because of unhappiness with management. That's 35%. It's up from 23% in 2004. Another recent study found that between 28 and 36% of U.S. workers report persistent abuse at work. So that mean boss of yours, you might think it's a personality disorder or blithe insensitivity, but it could be abnormal insecurity. When people are intellectually insecure, they come down hard on others, perhaps as a tactic for proving how smart they are. And sadly, it works. Wow. So what was all of that? Okay. One, remember we talk about in so many of our programs, data is our friend. And that's because whatever we're thinking is going to be skewed based on just our own limited experience. You know, I've seen what I've seen, I've heard what I've heard, I've learned what I've learned, I've done what I've done, and so it's going to be skewed to sort of put us in the sort of the center of the distribution center of scale. And I'm going to sort of feel like I'm average, right? That's what I think about myself. That's what most of us think about ourselves. And so we don't really have a good understanding of perspective. That's why we need data. So when I ask, is it possible, right? And more importantly than possible, is it probable that insecurities and fears of a manager prevent employee empowerment? I said, yes. I've got data. Right? 17% of people quit their jobs, leave because they can't stand management or the work environment. 35% of executives said good employees are most likely to quit because of unhappiness with management. Wow. Now, I can certainly infer that if my employees are quitting, or that they're not having extraordinarily high ratings of empowerment. Obviously, if they felt empowered, right, and the ability to be in charge and make decisions and have contributions that were substantive, they wouldn't quit. And this quote obviously was saying that it's not a personality disorder necessarily, but it could be that they're abnormally insecure. And then it also references some other research that shows when somebody's insecure intellectually. So it's got data and research that basically they had people feel, who were insecure, and then that person would observe, some business task, and then they would be critical. So the person who's insecure is going to seem super critical, right? And this argument is the reason they are so critical is because they're trying to show how smart they are. But they really aren't smart because they're insecure that they're not smart enough. You see what I mean? So somebody's saying something or doing something and you have insecurity and you're, oh my goodness, I'm insecure. I don't even know what they're saying. They seem really smart. They seem like they could be smarter than I am. I'll just be tough on them. I'm going to come down hard on them. I'm going to criticize them. And then the argument, sadly, was showing that it's effective, that the more critical you are of someone than the other people who are observing that. Remember, you're the manager, right? So the other people hear you're critical. You're telling them, oh, that's the worst presentation ever. I can't believe you even gave me that idea. That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Then the other people feel like, oh, wow, see, they're really stupid. That was a dumb idea. It could be a brilliant idea. It could be the most brilliant idea in the history of your entire industry. But nobody's going to know that because of your insecurity and fear, right? You're going to just tear that idea apart and humiliate and degrade the person and be really critical and mean and cruel because you're trying to show how smart you are, even though the whole reason you're doing this is because you're not smart enough and you're worried that they're smarter than you are. Wow, that's a vicious cycle of hurting other people, hurting the organization, stifling innovation and empowerment from other people, because you don't feel empowered when you just watch your manager sit there and berate and humiliate and chastise somebody else. You're definitely not going to step up with the new idea, right? Wow, what a effective tool management insecurity is. Not just for preventing employee empowerment, that's part of what it does. All these other beautiful things happen too. People quit. People definitely are not going to step up with ideas. Other people now are going to be negative toward the person who was trying to be innovative that had a really great idea. Let's keep reading. Some other quotes we have are from Global Post. It says, reading here from the show page on the website, page 173, website CourtneyAnderson.com. It says, when a manager has insecurities about his abilities and performance, the entire organization can suffer. In many cases, this type of boss will have difficulty making decisions and delegating tasks. According to CNN Money, when your boss is insecure, he will do everything. Oops, I'm sorry, I misspoke. He will do anything to make himself feel better, even at your expense. Expect questions on every action and criticism when things go wrong. I just have to interject. That ties in with the other quote we had from the Washington Post, right? Right there. Here we are again. We're right back to these old techniques that I do when I'm insecure. I criticize. Look at me. I'm criticizing. I'm coming down hard on you. Woo! We go right to that bag of tricks. Okay, so back to the quote. Here from Global Post. It says, rather than show your frustration with an insecure boss, so this is talking to the non-manager, right? The person who has to work for them. Bless their little hearts. Sort of a saying in the U.S. and parts of the regional parts of the U.S. And it's a sort of a way of saying that's sad. Show your support, back to the quote, show your support to help him get past his insecurity. So this is an article, both of these articles, I have to mention this. So here we are having some individual manager, right? Boss and or executive, right? So the person in charge, they have an insecurity challenge and situation. But the articles that are in these media reports are written not to tell that individual manager how serious this is, and what an urgent a priority issue this is to address, and how to stop doing it, and why to stop doing it, and what a disaster it is, and the ramifications of their actions. None of that. This is to tell the larger number of people who work for this person, how do you deal with it? It's almost, I'm going to make these analogies. It's almost like, there's a criminal, and the criminal goes out and assaults people. And the article isn't written to tell the criminal to stop assaulting people. The article is written to tell you, the person that the criminal is assaulting, how to deal with them assaulting you. Really? How about we deal with the problem, which is the person that's assaulting me to begin with? Why am I supposed to come up with some sort of special, technique and program to try to handle them assaulting me or to tolerate them assaulting me? I mean, that's honestly not how this should work. I'm the one that's the victim. And yet, that's what these articles are geared to, and that's what they're in their books and everything that are referenced in research, because that's who the larger number is, right? You have one manager, they could be in charge of hundreds or even thousands of people. There's many more numbers of people affected by the insecure management than there are individual managers. Just the numbers, you always are going to have many more team members than you're going to have managers. And so these sad, in my mind, really depressing and sad pieces are written largely to try to give the person who is stuck being assaulted at work by this insecure manager has, I guess, to sort of just tolerate it as long as they can. Wow. Normally, when we have somebody engaging in abuse, we are focused on the abuser, right? Look at that abuser. We have to stop that abusive behavior or stop them being allowed to be out in society abusing people. But at work, for some reason, we feel comfortable with, instead of focusing on the abuser, nope, we're going to sit here and talk about how do you handle, and I guess just tolerate the abuse. Just stay. That really, if you think about it, it should be shocking to you. Back to the quote from Global Post. Okay, so we left off, the quote was saying, expect questions on your every action and criticism when things go wrong, right? Rather than show your frustration with an insecure boss, show your support to help him get past his insecurities. Dealing with an insecure manager requires attention to detail and a willingness to sacrifice your own ego to boost his. Wow. Just think about that. How would you feel if, instead of it being a workplace manager situation, that it was a family, outside work, and you had the boss and the family, so a parent, right? And the parent's insecure, the parent's going to do anything they can to make himself feel better, even at your expense. And let's say so that's criticizing, humiliating, degrading, all the things we've been talking about, right? So let's say that this was an article and it was telling a spouse. So let's say there's one spouse who's the abuser, the humiliator, the critical, the insecure, right? And then we're telling the other spouse that you're going to get questions on every action and criticism when things go wrong. That's literally what the quote says, the article says, right? We're telling the spouse, you're going to criticize and on every action and questions and everything. And then you, the other spouse who's the victim of the abuse, you're not going to show your frustration with this insecure boss of your family. In fact, you're going to show your support to help him get past his insecurities. Dealing with your insecure manager of your family requires attention to detail and a willingness to sacrifice your own ego. I would also interject, and safety to boost his. So if it was a family and we were telling somebody, hey, you have to just tolerate it. You got an insecure family boss. You're going to get questions on every action and criticize every single thing that you do, especially when things go wrong. You're not going to show frustration to this insecure boss of your family. Nope. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and you're going to let it continue to happen. In fact, you're going to support them to, quote, help them get past their insecurities. We know, and let's just throw this out here, you can't do this. You can't, quote, make someone else get past their insecurities because they are totally in charge of that. You can't control other people. And if we told an adult in a family that instead of them trying to address the situation of the abuse, that they're supposed to just sit there and accept it and to sacrifice willingly their own ego and boost his, wow, that would be, boycotted. And it should be. But yet at work, for some reason, okay. I have another quote here from Forbes. And this is talking about the specific type of insecure boss who comes in the specific flavor. Remember I said I was savoring this show. Comes in the specific flavor of a micromanager. So this is the insecure manager, right? Coming in a specific flavor of micromanaging. All right, let's look at the quote from Forbes. It's on the show page, so you can go there and then access, of course, the full article. It says, if you've ever worked with a micromanager, you know how unproductive and demoralizing it can be. Again, I have to interject. This is, again, another article that's to you, the victim of the abuse by the insecure manager, with the same idea, to try to help you understand how better to stay in the abusive situation. That's my own aside. Here we go. If you've ever worked with a micromanager, you know how unproductive and demoralizing it can be. This control freak is reluctant to delegate, may second guess everything you do, and can shake your confidence in your own abilities. Simple tasks that you could accomplish quickly if left to your own devices, take twice as long. Your efforts may be reduced to dust as the micromanager completely redoes your work. So better to master the art of managing the micromanager. Again, I have to just pause for a moment. This should be staggeringly illogical to you. So now we have a specific flavor of our insecure, fearful micromanager, boss manager who is a micromanager. They're a control freak. They reluctant to delegate. They second guess everything we do. But we saw that with our other flavors of insecure manager. They shake my confidence in my abilities. Things at work that, here's the thing, remember. Now, I need to calm down. Management magicians, it looks like magic because everything's working relatively well, good communication, high retention, high levels of positive emotional and psychological well-being. Okay. And yet here you have an organization, and I must mention this. The organization has allowed somebody who has insecurity and fears to be a manager, which of course, at this point, we should already understand the answer is that should never happen. They do not ever need to be any type of manager because all that they do is destroy the organization and other people. And in addition to getting stuff done, which is technically what the manager is supposed to be doing, right? Managing resources, which are people and products and time and money to get stuff done. You have somebody who's a micromanager who's instead of getting stuff done, they're doing the intentional opposite. Things are taking twice as long. And they're going back and redoing your work. I mean, really? What a waste. Just let's put on our numbers. You know, from a business perspective, just from the numbers, you're going to tell me that you're blowing the time and the money and the resources on this because of one insecure manager that's sitting around redoing stuff? Things take twice as long because of this incessant insecure manager questioning and bothering the person that's doing the work. I'm paying for this as the business, as the business owner or the shareholder. I'm offended. Or if it's a government agency, as a taxpayer, I'm offended by this. I'm sickened by this. What a waste of our resources. Okay, I had to add that. Let's finish up this Forbes quote. Now, again, this is another one of these resources and these large periodicals that is trying and media outlets trying to tell the person, okay, this exists. You got the manager who's insecure, but what can you do? All you have to do is just stand there and stay abused, and let's talk about how to stay abused. This is, of course, my personal interpretation. All right, so back to that Forbes quote. It says, start by understanding what causes someone to act this way. Often it's a need for control that stems from insecurity, lack of confidence, workplace instability, and pressure to produce, both individually and as a team. Deep-seated psychological issues and problems at home can also influence the way people behave at work. Okay, that's the end of that quote. I absolutely concur. Now, again, our program obviously is not an outlet or an opportunity for people to address deep-seated psychological issues. No talk show is. No audio program is. No ebook is. No webinar. No speech I give is. You need, for deep-seated psychological issues, you need professionally credentialed and trained psychological professionals. I mean, obviously, right? Problems at home, obviously, influence how people behave at work and vice versa. And let's look at this last quote that I have on the show page. It's from Wall Street Journal, and it's focusing. It's from the series, the section India Real Time. So it's focusing on the nation of India and business issues. And of course, wonderful nation. I have had the pleasure and privilege of working in India, in Mumbai, and receiving actually some accolades from some international human resource development congress and. Of course, everything we do is focused on global issues on our show, and I just wanted to take a few moments there to acknowledge a very important part of our global discussion in global business sector, of course, the nation of India. So here we go. Here's Wall Street Journal from that article. Reading from the quotes on the show page. All of us want to move up in our careers, but does your boss want that for you? Not necessarily, says Prashant Dio Singh, head of human resources and group affairs at electronics major Panasonic India PVT. Also have to mention, as an aside, Panasonic is one of our show sponsors. So there's a couple of things here that are important. One, this is not specific to your office or your insecure situation or your country or your part of the world. This is a global problem. All right, let's keep going. Mr. Singh says that many managers are insecure about their jobs, so they don't let their subordinates shine. Instead, they might take credit for their employees' work, adds Mr. Singh. When possible, such managers avoid hiring people who they think could replace them. This is one of the most serious mistakes that managers make, he says. Also, we see a lot of bosses who are insecure. They tend to hoard information and don't let their subordinates' work be recognized by the company. They may delegate less work to their team members or not invest in their training. These bosses may favor employees who don't challenge their authority. They could go to the extent of not hiring people who are smarter than them on fears that the employee could replace them. Wow. Wow. I hope that you are so disturbed by this. I actually feel almost ill. Wow. So what are some takeaways at this point? Okay. I said at the outset, are your insecurities and fears preventing employee empowerment? The answer is yes. How do I know the answer is yes? Because you asked the question. If you're a management magician, your insecurities and fears are nominal. They're not an issue at all. They're not impacting your employees at all. Your employees don't even know about your insecurities and fears. Your insecurities and fears have nothing to do with how you're making decisions. You're making decisions based on what's the best way to do this efficiently. What's the best way to get this done right the first time? What's the best way to increase my employee empowerment? What's the best way to increase my employee engagement? What's the best way to retain superstars, people who are excellent? What's the best way to hire the best and keep the best? What's the best way for me to go to my office and have people who are self-disciplined and self-directed and taking care of their tasks and bringing innovation and imagination to what we do and helping us all succeed together? None of that is happening when you are making decisions from some sort of primal place of your individual imaginary, because these aren't physical things. They're in your head, right? They're imaginary. They're not tangible things you could touch. Insecurities and fears. Again, you should feel ill. This is a global thing. We've read from sources around the world, and they're saying the same thing over and over again. How do I know the manager's insecure? Well, overly critical, negative, asking a ton of questions to slow everything down, taking credit for other people's ideas, going out of their way not to hire intelligent, gifted, and talented people because they're, quote, too smart or too good, or they'll fear that they'll take their job in the future. Really? I thought the job of the manager was to be practicing their own individual joyful art of business, have their own individual goals that they're working on surpassing, and doing everything in their power to find and retain the absolute best talent for that organization so that during their tenure and then after they've gone on to something else or retired or whatever, that organization continues to be the best. That's like having children in a family and saying, well, I don't want my children to be better than I am. No, I intentionally want them to be worse. What? I'm angry. I'm angered. I'm not angry, but I am angered. This is so destructive. And yet here we have from all these different global perspectives, the exact same behavior. So we can't even argue that it's culturally, influenced. Destroying individual employees who want to be contributing, who are seeking empowerment because you're going back and doing their work. You're chastising and criticizing them. You're not even hiring the intelligent people because you feel like, well, they're too smart. Hoarding information. Don't let the subordinates' work be recognized by the organization. Don't invest in your employee training. Remember the question at the outset of this Wall Street Journal piece. All of us want to move up in our careers, but does your boss want that for you? Not necessarily. Sickening. Now, for those of you who are management magicians, I know you're like I am. We really are. It's sickening. You think, how does this happen? Who are these people? What is going on? Well, in a very simplistic sense, the challenge is that this is an individual who has two issues that we have to address. One, that they are in a management job. And two, they have insecurities and fears that are influencing their behavior to this detrimental effect. Now let's break that down. The first and the easiest part to address is the fact that they're in a management position. The second part, which is harder to address in terms of time, it takes more investment, is the fact that the individual has these insecurities and fears that are impacting, influencing, directing, apparently, their behavior. So let's start with the easy part first. Does someone who has these insecurities and fears that distort their thinking and result in their behavior, where they don't hire the best and most talented, where they sabotage their team members' success, where they hoard resources, where they don't want their team members to have training in resources or recognition, do those people with those behaviors belong in any management position? I'm including one where literally they only have to manage themselves. Should they be in any management position? Should they be managing? Let's just answer this a little bit broader. If they were in a family, earlier I made those analogies. If I read that exact same content, I said it's a family. Should you have someone who's managing a family, who's critical, who does everything they can to make themselves feel better and to put the other person down, who does everything they can to sabotage the other party, who doesn't want the people in the family to succeed, who doesn't want the people in the family to get any recognition? Do they belong managing a family? What does that do to a child with that type of family manager? What does it do to an adult in a family like that? We know the destruction it does. We know that. It can destroy lives. We're not being overly dramatic with this. In fact, in many societies, we would call these things abuse, right? Emotional abuse, neglect, sabotage. You literally want them to fail because you don't want them to have an accolade. You don't want them to be rewarded or acknowledged. Wow. Should that person with those behaviors be in a management position at your job? No. Anywhere on this planet? No. Anywhere in our solar system? No. No, they absolutely. Look at what they're doing. Look at the behavior, the consistency of describing what they do. It's apparently rather obvious. You can spot one a mile away. All this research and time has gone into trying to, share with people who are in these abusive situations about how to respond to the abuse or try to appease the abuser or distract the abuser with flattery or whatever. I mean, I've never, it's just it's revolting. I really, again, I'm feeling ill. So let's go to the easy part. These behaviors, someone has these behaviors and this thinking, this distorted thinking process where they're making decisions based on insecurity and fear. They are not qualified for any management position anywhere at all. Period. Done. They need to not be put in that position. And if a horrible, egregious error has been made and they were put in that position, then they must be immediately removed. You must remove them now, immediately. No, they cannot stay. They can't stay a second longer. In fact, pause the program and come back later and listen later after you've removed them, because you can't leave them there for a moment. Look at the chaos and the waste of resources. People are running away, quitting your business. The things that needed to get done are taking twice as long because of these idiot. I'm sorry, that was an inappropriate term. My anger resulted in me using that term. I refer to the people as idiots. They're not idiots. They're not. They're not idiots. They are making idiotic decisions. I'm going to stand by that. Making idiotic decisions, obviously based on the consequences. But the reason they're making the idiotic decisions is because they're driven by these untreated issues of this powerful insecurity and fear that's resulting in these destructive actions to themselves, to others, to the organization, financially, everything. So it's an idiotic decision, but I'm not going to label the person as an idiot, because this is something that can be fixed and addressed and treated, rehabilitated. Okay, so it is an idiotic decision. I misspoke. I do regret that. But it is an idiotic decision. But it's not that the person themselves is some sort of state that can't be changed. Not that they're in an idiot state and they cannot move into a healthy state. It's just that they currently are in that state, and while they're in that state, they cannot be allowed to stay as a manager at all for a second. So again, pause and come back when you've addressed that. If you have the power, you must immediately get them out of that position. You can, I don't care how it's done, reassign them temporarily, leave, whatever needs to be done. But they cannot be allowed to sit there and run out, refuse to hire, and run away all the people that are in the organization that have ideas and that could be part of your success. You must stop the bleeding. financial bleeding, human resources bleeding. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, so we said there's two parts. One, that this person is in a management position. The second problem is the person, of course, is suffering under this heavy burden of distorted thinking and issues that are resulting in these really self-destructive and organizationally destructive behaviors, right? So the first part we fix. They can't stay in these jobs. They have to leave. So I'm speaking to those who are able to have the power to exert so that the person is removed, perfect, from that job, pending addressing the second issue, which is what? That they have these insecurities and fears that are just absolutely, malignant and become so ingrained in their thinking and their behavior process that they're conducting themselves in these ways that are completely contrary to anything that we would do toward organizational success. So the second part is treating the insecurity and fear and addressing those issues and helping that person reach a healthy state where, guess what, they are able to make the decisions in the workplace, and I also argue outside the workplace, based on the actual criteria, right? So ideally, I hire people who are intelligent and talented. Ideally, I do want my team members to succeed and be retained in my organization because we actually have hired them. Ideally, I'm not going to hoard information. I'm not going to sabotage my employees. I'm not going to run around trying to do my job, allegedly managing, but then also running and also trying to handle every other thing that the other people are doing because I don't trust them and I don't delegate to them. And if I do, I want to go back and redo everything myself. I don't humiliate and degrade and abuse team members simply out of my own fear that they're smarter than I am or that their ideas are better. So all of this is just, we look at the behavior, and all of us everyone would agree, I would think, that none of this is what we're supposed to be doing. The criteria we're supposed to be working on is hiring and retaining the best, using our resources to get stuff done, practicing the joyful art of business individually and collectively. None of this is happening. Okay, so the first issue we fix. It's very easy. Then you use your employment process and your appropriate jurisdictional requirements to document, discipline, and move the person away from the management position because they're unable to function while they're belaboring under this condition. The second issue, of course, is the individual. That's what we said earlier. These are aspiring, maybe, or they were former management magicians. They desperately want to get back to being a management magician, so that they just and let's be fair. Let's think about the honestly the paranoia and the anxiety and all of this, where you're going out of your way, from the perspective of this person who's a manager who's suffering under the insecurity and fear. We're focusing on the behavior, right, where they're berating and chastising and criticizing and micromanaging everything. But just imagine, let's just take a moment again in our empathy, where we put ourselves in other people's shoes, and let's think about what's that feel like. I would assume it would feel like a claustrophobic, I can't catch my breath, and you just like terror. Like I'm terrorized, right? Like you'd be terrorized if you're in some place and the hurricane's coming. I'm terrorized. Will the hurricane hit my house? I don't know. I've done everything I can to prepare, but I'm frightened. Imagine feeling like that at work all day long. Oh, I'm frightened. That person, they may intellectually be smarter than I am. They may have a better idea than I have. I'm frightened. They may do the work more effectively. Oh, I'm frightened. Just imagine that apprehension of the hurricane going to hit, but you live like that nonstop all the time. The toll it takes on people. Again, putting it on that perspective, the toll it takes on you, on your health, on your well-being. You're not even able to probably relax ever. And then let's be very fair, the guilt feelings. The guilt you must have when you intentionally refuse to hire the most talented person who could actually help your organization. So you steal money and success from your own company by hiring someone less intelligent and less talented just because of your own fear, and you know it. You know you did that. Oh, the guilt of that. Oh, this is even more disturbing. I feel even more ill thinking and putting myself in the shoes of that person almost than I did before. This is very upsetting at every level. We must help. Show's about solutions. So what are we going to do? Okay. The first part it was easy. From the external perspective, we remove the person from the position where they can inflict all this abuse. The second part, though, and let's just add it outside of work, if you're in a family and it was severe enough, and especially if you had physical violence thrown in, which these articles didn't describe, but I have have worked on cases as a lawyer and as a consultant, and studied cases where there is physical abuse. So just like in a family, if you had the person who was the emotional and physical abuser, often they actually were removed from the family and put into jail. Sometimes they're just have court orders where they're not allowed to be within so many feet or so many meters of the people they're abusing. They get restraining or protective orders on them, or they're told you have to stay away from them because you're abusing and hurting them. It's the same thing at work. We have to remove them. Think about it just like that. It's the same thing. You got to remove them. Remember, when we took a little time to put ourselves in the shoes of that person, that terror, that sheer just fear of the of the hurricane, of the being exposed, and then while you're going along and you're doing these things to hurt the company, and you're hurting the individually intelligent person because you're not hiring them, you're not promoting them, you're not giving them information, you're hoarding things, you're stealing their programs and presenting it as your own. I mean, all these things. I mean, the guilt of all of this. It's just all. I mean, it's just wow. We're overwhelmed, right? I'm overwhelmed. We have to stop it. So we stopped them from hurting other people by removing them from the management situation. But now look at them; they're still spinning in this horrible vortex of destruction and pain and guilt. And we got to help. All right. Now, if you look in the show notes, you'll see just a couple of quick resources. Now, the problem, of course, is this person has these serious issues with the insecurity and the fear. Now, where those things come from? Some of the other sources I already read from talked about some of that. It may come from a psychological issue, medical, psychological challenge, a mental health challenge. It may come from an environmental challenge. Maybe the person is reacting to something in their environment that's triggering these things in themselves. But it needs to be treated by people who treat the mental and psychological issues, because that's where these are coming from. So it's not that the person had a broken foot and then this is what happened. No, this is something that's separate from anything physical. So we have to send them to people who deal with mental and psychological challenges. So I've got some links there. There's an article to Psych Central, which is a resource online referring to psychology, and it's an article talking about things to do. It's 5 things to do when you feel insecure, right? And it's trying to help people sort of self address, right? Self-help with some things to do when you're feeling insecure. So that's a kind of resources that if we have someone who is listening to this program and it dawned on them that they may be this person, that's just one little quick resource I listed. Now they're going to have to do many more things, but some of the things that were on that resource, 5 things to do when you feel insecure. One, it says consider it beautiful. Consider what beautiful? Insecurity. Consider it part of being vulnerable, as part of who we are as humans, and part of this reframing it. It also talks about having a self-esteem file where you have prepared something where ahead of time you're going to list the good things, sort of the things that you view yourself in a positive way, and you're going to go to that physical manifestation. I don't care if it's on paper or on a tablet or whatever on your smartphone, where you're going to, I'm going to remind myself. It's a way again, right, to give us that perspective and help us stop ourselves when we're engaging in behavior that's not accurate. It's not accurate that we're so fearful of the new hire. We're so fearful of our team member. We're so fearful. That's not even accurate at all. It's making sense, right? It says, now this isn't really, well, maybe it'll help. It says avoid people you feel insecure around. Now, I was going to say this isn't really going to totally fit our situation, because the problem is that's what our managers are doing. The insecure manager actually is trying to avoid people they feel insecure around. That's why they're not hiring them. That's why they're not promoting them. That's why they're degrading and humiliating and insulting them in front of everybody. They actually are trying to avoid them. That's why they're not letting them work there. The problem is that that's destroying the organization. Now, of course, at this point in our narrative, we've already removed them from management positions. But the challenge is that they feel insecure around. The problem is everyone, really. The person doesn't even work there. The applicant, they're insecure around. So we can't apply this to our work situation. But a psychologist, mental health professional, can help work with the person to do what's appropriate for them and the triggers that are causing the behavior in them. Surround yourself with supportive people. Now, that's a good, healthy thing to do. Surround yourself with supportive people. Now, we want to make sure we distinguish that from, remember in our articles we talked earlier that some of them were trying to help the person purportedly help. Well, I guess in a way they were trying to help. They were trying to work with the person who's managed in quotation marks by this person who's suffering under these issues, and give them this sort of false flattery, play up to their ego, all this kind of stuff. Now, of course, those people don't really support that person. They're angry and resentful, and they're just trying to keep themselves safe and buy time, I'm sure, until they can quit or move on to something better. So you need legitimately supportive people to help you begin, I'm sure, building that foundation in your life to begin to address these fears and terror that you're in all the time, that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, and all this kind of stuff. And it says, and on this top 5, it says, no, you're invisible. No, it's invisible. No, what's invisible? Your insecurity and fear is invisible. It actually was invisible for these managers until they started to show it at work, right? By the criticizing, by doing somebody else's work over, by refusing to hire the person, by hoarding information, by taking credit. I mean, all of that made it visible. So it actually was something that wasn't visible until the person who was suffering from the insecurity and fear made it visible, and then everybody can see it all the time, and then they're doing all this to try to react to it. So we want to make sure we remember that's when you're healthy. When you're healthy, it's invisible. And we also remember, again, everyone has insecurities. If you think that you're never insecure about everything because you know everything is the most perfect thing in the world, and you have another mental health problem dealing with your inflated ego, narcissism, things like that, it's ridiculous. We all have things. Every moment of every day, I learn new words. I meet people all the time who I'm totally, absolutely, fully aware of, are more intelligent than I am and more talented or whatever. I mean, that's the beauty of life. That doesn't change how I define myself. Does it? I want people to share their knowledge with me and be part of my business organizations who are smarter than I am, because otherwise, well, how will I get any better? I mean, but you have to be more healthy and have a place where you feel confident and comfortable, and you're defining your value and understanding that being around people who are smarter than you, the only good thing that can happen is that you could potentially get better information and resources. The only bad thing that can happen is nothing. If they're smarter than you, then you know that, and they know that, and everybody else knows it. So it's not like it's not going to be known because you're running around trying to insult them or lying and trying to make them look bad. I mean, it's still there. Everybody knows it. So why don't you benefit from it? That's like me saying, oh, there's somebody and I'm doing an athletic event and that person is faster than I am. They run faster than I am. And everybody knows it because they already ran faster than I did. But I sit there and I berate them and, oh, you ran faster, but you're still ugly. Okay, but did that fix the fact that everybody knows they run faster than I am, including me and them and everybody else? No, it's stupid. Again, the behavior is stupid, not the person. Remember, the person is belaboring under this horrible panic and fear and impending doom, and they're just making really poor choices because they're motivated by these irrational, surges of adrenaline and anxiety and everything. So we feel for them. That was painful when we sat and put ourselves in their shoes. They're really in deep distress. So that's just one little short resource. But I put another resource there from Berkeley, one of the top universities in the world, and basically it was through one of their articles, and it's talking about some of the things that cause these insecurities and fears for people might be related to attachment theory, attachment disorder, and so there's some resources there, and it talks about how some of this for some people may come from their insecurity may come from when they were a child. If their primary caregiver didn't help behave in ways that made them feel secure in who they are and secure in attachment to others, then it can manifest itself as adults and throughout the rest of their life. Now, these are things, obviously, they're going to have to work with professionals, and who knows, all types of things are available, where, therapy, groups, reading resources, behavioral issues, and working through things where you condition yourself to understand things and get different perspectives that are healthy and make better choices in terms of outcome. It may be something people sometimes work with medication. There's all kind of things. I mean, there's a wealth of things that can help. So let's be on a very positive note here toward this close of this episode. One, these are some really important issues. I've trained and done management training and educational training on this for 15, 16, 17 years, somewhere in that range. And as a lawyer, I've handled cases like this, because one of the things we said early at the outset is people quit their job. Yeah, but if they feel like they had to quit their job because of one of these people with insecurity and fear who prevented them from getting the promotions and the pay that they were entitled to, then many times there's a legal action that you can take to, because that wasn't fair to that person, right? They were cheated out of something they were entitled to because somebody else is insecurity and fear. So I've been involved as a lawyer before I started doing educational programs and corporate training on this. So that's why I say, it's been a span of years. And it's just, again, to be positive. We can fix it. And let's talk about, again, reminder. One, you cannot ever put somebody with these issues into a management job, ever. Never, ever. Second thing is, if they're in those jobs, you got to remove them immediately until they can go through the treatment that they need to become healthy. Healthy people, of course, are making decisions based on the criteria. They're not making decisions based on my irrational fear that the other person might be smarter than I am or is smarter than I am. And I'm going to try to destroy the company by not hiring people or keeping people. I'm going to make people leave. I'm going to waste all of our time and money on my fear-driven desire for redoing, quote, everything or attention. These things are sad, and they're very, very painful, right? That's why they elicit the anger from me and the frustration and this pain. I just even thinking about the pain that person's in, while they're sabotaging the company and the guilt they feel, and the things they're doing, it's just awful. So they need help, serious help, to get to the core issues that have caused them to think these distorted things and to behave in these ways. And the really awesome positive thing is that the help is there. Now, not everybody necessarily may live in the place with access to the best help or have the resources, but remember, we're talking about managers. So ideally, they did have a higher income, and ideally, hopefully, they have resources where they can get that help. If you're part of an organization, you have an employee assistance program where the organization itself has had pre-set up relationships with people who can help with emotional and psychological and mental health challenges, then great. They need to go and be referred, and then of course it's their confidential private way that they're going to work with their provider and their professionals to help them, whatever combination of resources and treatment available, to get them to the place where they stop this. They stop these behaviors that are so self-destructive and destructive to others, and they learn to be healthy, and then they can live in peace without this imagined hurricane that's going to hit, and that fear and terror that driving them to do all these awful things. And we know that works. We know it works. Let's be really positive about this. This is totally solvable. But I do want to mention here at the close, it's not a solution to just tell somebody who's around something like this in this abusive situation where they're being denied what they're entitled to in terms of the job and the opportunities, is to sit around and play more psychological games on the person and try to appease them and false flattery and all that. That's not a solution. That might be a temporary way to stop the situation from eroding, and the person maybe even become lashing out even more aggressively, or even potentially crossing over from verbal into physical abuse or whatever. And I do understand that in the moment you do need to save yourself. It's almost like we've talked about in other programs. When someone is a criminal, I'm walking down the street and that person is getting ready to decide who they're going to assault and be a criminal. Maybe I'm going to distract them. And you read about this, and it's documented. Sometimes when someone approaches someone, I'm going to rob you, and then you try to, distract them. You speak really calm, and I'm having a bad day too. Are you? That's a great color shirt. You look. That's a really great color. It brings out your eyes. You look really nice. You're doing a lot of this because, of course, you're trying to, in that moment, save your life. So, in the moment, if you're dealing with this person who's being abusive and cruel and doing all these horrible things to you, then I do see why these articles are helpful in that moment. I'm going to redirect them. I'm going to distract them. I'm going to use false flattery. I'm going to do whatever I can in that moment to try to take the abuse off of me and lessen it so I can get to safety. Those articles then in that moment make sense. My concern, and where I get really frustrated, is some people, I think, misinterpret these things, and then they'll think, well, I'll just keep coming to this job. And I'll stay in this for years, decades, your whole career of abuse and neglect and being degraded and denied opportunity, and not understand that was a very short term suggestion for you to use those techniques just to get through the short term, right? Like to get through this moment, to get through until I could get to safety by leaving the job or whatever. But you don't sit there in an abusive, frightening situation and just tolerate it forever, because that's it's cruel, it's unethical. I'm going to argue it's illegal, and it's not. No, like I would tell you in your home, somebody's abusing you in your home, and all they do is criticize you and humiliate you and berate you and put you down and sabotage you from succeeding. No, you don't stay in that. Of course not. You remove the person from the ability to behave in that way around you, and then you hope you do everything you can to help them get to the resources to help them treat these issues. And if they do, then maybe you'll get the fairy tale outcome, or everything, you can be together and they'll be healthy and you'll be healthy. It's a win-win. But if they don't have the ability to stick to the treatment plan and to really rectify these problems, you can't stay there. And it's the same thing with work. It's still you. I don't care that you left where you live and went to where you work. It's the same thing. It's still you. Abuse is abuse. This is wrong. We know it. That's what was talked about. So short term, if you need to use some of those techniques in the articles to kind of get through that day, get through that moment, get through that meeting where they're being critical, or where they're being dishonest about what you did at work, if they're stealing your idea, to get through that moment, then I totally understand. Just like you would if a street crime, try to get through that moment and get to safety. But remember, it's to get to safety. The safety is the goal, and that's what we have to do. We have to get to safety. So again, this was. Wow, I said I was savoring it when it started because again, I have so much familiarity. But as we moved into the material, it's just sobering. I do strongly encourage you, if this at all seemed to you like it might be someone to try to help them get the resources or direct them to the resources. Again, if it's you, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing at all. This could happen to anybody who had that combination of factors that led to this sort of taking a hold of them and distorting their thoughts and behavior. All you have to do is just treat it aggressively. Seriously. And of course it's fixed all the time. Fixed meaning that people address it and they become healthy and then they get back to life as it should be and back to being a management magician. So again, I encourage you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com, share our show on social media. Let me know what's on your mind. And please, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Thank you.